Hello everyone. So, around a week ago, I've made an Umineko thread on Twitter detailing some of my thoughts on the story, and I've enjoyed making it. But I also feel like I've left a lot of things unsaid there, and I just kind of want to talk about them in a more freeform way. I don't really have the energy to write another essay or something, so this is entirely unscripted, mostly just me rambling. Don't expect anything too much. If you wanna hear my thoughts, you can literally continue. I think Berncastle has to be the weakest big villain slash antagonist in the story. Don't get me wrong, she's not bad, like she's still pretty great, but compare her to Beatrice, like she's probably one of the best characters of all time. Like I think she's the best character of all time. She's in the top 5 for sure. But even to the episode antagonists like Kyrie, Eva, I think they are a lot more interesting. And in episodes 5 and 6, you have Erika, and Erika, she's not a human character, but she still has enough depth to her. She still feels like a person, and you kind of understand where she's coming from. Like you get her goals, you get her motivations, you understand how she sees the world and how she relates it to herself. Like she's an interesting character, and she's also a lot more entertaining. Like she's so over the top. I love Erika. But then Burn, for the first few episodes, is actually kind of dull. She's in the background, so it's not a criticism of Umineko. Like she's supposed to be a background character there. But in the Ancestors arc, like she gets to show a bit more personality at the start, and then she gets to show a lot more personality, which is obviously great. But aside from her relationship with Lambda Delta, she's not the most interesting Guminako character. Like, she doesn't have that much to her. She's a lot of fun, but that's about it. Which I can say that for most of the major characters in Umineko. Now it's very possible that Higurashi makes her a more compelling antagonist, but I haven't played Higurashi, so like I can't really say anything about it. I hope that once I play Higurashi, hopefully sometimes this year, I could appreciate more of her. But right now, I think Berncastle is by far the weakest antagonist, which is kind of a shame. Like she's the antagonist of episode she's the main antagonist of episode 8. Maybe you could consider Fezarin, but Fezarin is very much a weird character to think about in terms of protagonist antagonist. Like she switches sides so much, like that it makes Beatrice place in the story seem consistent, and like that character shifts places all the time. Fezarin never stays the same characters throughout like 30 minutes. She serves a completely different role, so I don't know if you could even define her as an antagonist. If I have to pick my favorite servant that isn't Shannon or Canon, it would have to be Gota. Gota is just like a super silly character. Like I don't know what it is about this type of character that is just so funny to me. He doesn't really do anything. He just like kind of a prick that is a loser and messes up a lot. But I find that really endearing in like how everyone else, like even Nanjo and Kumasawa and Genji, are like kind of in on it. And then like Godai has like like he has no idea what's going on. Like Godai's like, what the fuck is going on, man? So I think Gora is a very fun character, and I would not like to read Umineko without Gora. Um, the best of the Umineko dads would have to be Kraus, Moon Tourism Kraus. Again, he's a silly little guy, doing his silly little business adventures. Doesn't work out for him, but I think Kraus has a lot to him. You see him a lot in flashbacks. He's in Ava's flashback in episode 3. He's in Natsui's flashback, and that adds a lot to him. You feel how his relationship with Kinzo and his brothers shaped him over time. You know how he feels about his brothers and sisters. It's not one-sided, like he doesn't like them, but he also regrets treating them that way. He actually genuinely loves Natsui and Jessica, which I thought was a really interesting twist. Like I expected him to be just a douchebag, and then he had a lot more to him. He also just like has a lot of good comedy moments. Especially the god fight in episode 4, like that's one of the funniest scenes I think in the entire story. Um, yeah, I think Kraus is really great. Um, Rudolph is also pretty good. Um, I wish the story expanded a bit more on his relationship with Butler. Like, you kind of get that in the last few episodes, but it's mostly Kyrie that carries the Kyrie Rudolph Butler family dynamic. And like Angie is kind of weird to put in that mix. So I don't know how I should talk about it. Like she isn't even in the like she can't even interact with Rudolph and Kyrie most of the time. So it makes it kind of weird to discuss the relationship for me. Um, and then you have Hideyoshi, which I wouldn't call him a bad character by any means. He's just like a jolly guy. Like he, he's he smiles a lot, and like he usually is regulated to just restraining Eva and making sure she doesn't get too out of control. She doesn't get too angry. Like he's an important character for the family dynamic. You definitely can't remove him, and I wouldn't even like recommend changing him. And it's good that he's like 99.9% of the time just regulated to being a background character in a scene. Like I think the actually only scene he's the main focus for a couple of minutes is when Natsui is in the closet, not because she's gay, and he's crying in the room. Out of the Umineko moms, I think they're all really, really good. I think Kyrie is definitely the weakest character, but she's still fucking amazing as a character. But she just doesn't get as much time to shine. But every time Kyrie does get to have some time in the spotlight, she's great. She does a lot of reasoning. Her interactions with Butler are a lot of fun, especially recontextualized with all of her scenes talking about how she feels about Asumu and how that changes the context of their relationship. Like I thought that was really interesting. But overall, I feel like Kira is the only mom which isn't the main focus of the episode. Like all of the other moms get at least one episode in which they're basically the main character. But when she does get to shine, especially in the episode 7 Tea Party, she can be one of the best characters. I don't think she's misused or she has missed potential. I think it shows just enough for her to not lose that interest you had in what's going on with her. I think that's something in general Umineko does way better than any other series, and it's regulating the less interesting characters to less screen time, and having the more interesting character get more screen time. You don't get a character who is just kind of there blabbing on for a long time. All of the characters who have a lot of screen time are also really interesting characters. Like even George and Jessica, which I know some people don't really like, especially George, but I think George as a person is not that interesting, but as a character in the family dynamic, he's very interesting. Like he's very much a product of the time, but I'm getting sidetracked. I think the next best mom character is Natsuhi. Natsui is also a fantastic character. Her episode 1 stuff is a bit more tame compared to what Eva and Rosa get, but I think it's a good thing. In episode 1, you're really getting to know all of the family, all of the types of mysteries. Like, it wouldn't work for her to have an extreme storyline. Instead, you get what's going on with her, you get her relationship with Cross, her relationship with Jessica, how she feels about Kenzo, and you kinda get to know the in and out of her character. And then when it's revealed that Kinzo is dead, her whole character gets recontextualized so much in episode 5, which is like so interesting to me. She's such a tragic character, and like George, also very much a product of the time. I'm not saying women like Natsui that are treated like Natsui don't exist these days, but like obviously it was very common in the time period. And I found it really interesting how sympathetic the story was with her, and how like she obviously committed the sin of throwing Leon off the cliff, but the story doesn't like punish her for it. It doesn't like it doesn't feel like the story is mad at Natsui because she really shouldn't be blamed for it. She did a bad thing, but I feel like in the context of the story very much emphasizes how much she felt depressed at the time, and then her whole dynamic with Erika in episode 5 of Erika accusing Natsui of not having love, of being a soulless, hateful kind of person who is sad all the time, which is the sad part and the whole part. Like you kind of feel like that at the start of episode 1, but by episode 5, you know she has more to it, and it's really hateful to see someone treat her like that. I just found it so interesting. Like Natsu is a great character. And then you have Ava. Ava, I think, is such an amazing character for so many reasons. Um, First of all, I think out of the family dynamics, I think Hideyoshi, George, and Eva are the most interesting. Like, you can really see how Kinzo's parenting affected Eva and how she treats George and how she treats Hideyoshi and how, like, all these interact. Um, and it has so many rippling effects in the story. And in episode 3, like when she obviously finds the gold and like goes on a murder spree, and that is insane. Um, and it just goes to show how fucked like Kinzo's parenting was actually. Um, but also what I find interesting about Eva compared to Kyrie and Natsui, which obviously aren't the like sisters of the family. Like Eva had to live with Rudolph, with Rosa, with Kinzo, and with Kraus, and like she really knows them. Um, like she understands Kraus and Rudolph a lot, but she doesn't really understand Rosa, which I find really interesting, like because of how Rosa acts as a person. Just really, really interesting stuff, and obviously there's also the stuff with Angie. Um, like at the start, it very much seems like Ava just became a hateful bitch after the events of episode 3. Um, but in episodes 7 and 8, like that whole script is being flipped on its head, which like episode 7 and 8 do that for a lot of characters, but Ava is one of the biggest, I think. And it's really interesting how Ava is on one hand like this super like insane like character who is capable of absolutely psychotic fits and like leaps of logic and is very much able to treat people inhumanly. But on the other hand, she's also very much like an emotionally damaged person who is just trying to like love their family, Al- and like you really see that. But the character I like the most is Rosa, and Rosa I think is like the best depiction of child abuse being done to another character that I've ever seen. Uh, Rosa, initially, like, I really didn't care about her, obviously. Like, in the start of episode 1, she seems like a super boring character, and then she slaps Maria, and that really took me out. I remember not liking how the characters treated that like it was a normal thing, but now that I have the context and I know what Rikishi tried to do by it, I like this scene a lot, obviously. Um, and then like I kinda started to grow interested in Rosa as a character, and then she unfortunately died on the first Twilight. Um, but then episode 2 comes and like the whole like the beginning is like so focused on Rosa and Maria, and it's some of the most painful scenes in the story for me. Um like I like I didn't like Maria at all at the beginning of episode 1, and by the by before even the murders happened on Rakanjima on the second game, like I felt so bad for her. Like I just want to hug her. Um, and like, but the thing that it's just like so painful is like you see how Rosa has so many conflicting feelings about Maria and about herself, like how she sometimes like becomes this super abusive, hurtful person, and but and how sometimes she just despises that part of herself and just want to put a stop to it all. Um, and that conflict in episode 2 gets so much focus and is just so interesting. I also really loved seeing how she was so distrustful of all the servants, how angry she was, how suspicious she was. Like you really see how growing up with these three big scheming older siblings affected her and made her have like insane trust issues that would probably take like thousands of years of therapy to treat. Like I feel bad for her, but on the other hand, like it was super entertaining. Like having just this character who doesn't trust anyone on episode 2 who will just accuse anyone and anything. Like, if she thinks it can explain what's going on and make you feel at least a little bit in control. Because I assume that's how she coped with life living in the Ushiyumiya family. And then obviously, and then you have like the final scene with her and Maria and her like finally becoming a real aspirant and like just giving up on all of her aspirations, like just wanting Maria to be safe. And like I don't think even in this video, which is supposed to be like my expanded thoughts, like I can even describe the sorts of emotions I felt about the scene when I first saw it, and even after that, like you get a scene with Rosa and Beatrice like in the purgatory of Rosa having to eat her siblings and almost eating Maria, and it's like one of the most like insane scenes in all of the questions arcs, and like I just found all of her scenes in episode 2 to be some of the most interesting stuff there. And like she pretty much carries the real world events of episode 2, I think. Um, and then in episode 3, you kinda learn more about how she met with Beatrice when she was a child. I don't know exactly how to recontextualize like how it makes the character better yet. Like I like that she has it, like, but right now I don't I can't quite put my finger on what's the logical explanation to why I like it. Um, like just that Rosa has like the worst luck of any person on planet Earth. Um, and then in episode 4, I would not like to discuss the abuse scenes between Rosa and Maria in episode 4, because those scenes are genuinely like maybe actually the most painful parts of Umineko to go through. Like these scenes can be like if I didn't experience any child abuse, but I imagine if you did go through it, like those scenes can be very triggering. Um, and like I can't even imagine like what sort of shit Ryukishi has seen to write something that feels so real and painful. Um, and I really can't even describe it, but that's it on the Umineko moms, like quite long segments, I think. Now, for favorite and least favorite cousins, how would I rank them? My least favorite is Jessica, I think. Jessica uh never really became a super interesting character for me. Like she's good natured, she's a good person generally. Like I understand like her relationship with Cross and Natsui, but in general like it's not the most interesting relationships, and it's not the most like interesting character. She's not bad. Like she's still pretty good. I don't think like any of the characters in Umineko are anything below like okay, except for like maybe the rabbits and the Furfur, whatever their name are, which are just kind of grating to me. I don't really like their voices, but I think Jessica is a pretty decent character. Uh, then I think George. George is mostly good uh, for how his relationship interacts with Eva and Shannon. Um, I think there's some really good stuff here, but it's not the George parts that are good. So I don't know how to judge it. Like he's a character who does his job in anything he's in. I never like he's very cringy, and on a first playthrough, like you just kind of want to punch him in the face a bit. Like he's a bit like an annoying like he's an annoying cousin who's better than anyone. Um, but as you see his insecurities, like you get where he's coming from, like you understand why he acts the way he acts, and with the recontextualization that Shannon is Yasu, all of his early romance scenes with Shannon suddenly make a lot more sense and are way more interesting. Then Maria, which I've talked like 2 minutes ago, how I feel about Maria and Rosa. I think that's pretty much the entire crux of her character. So I want to discuss it more. I think it's very cool. She likes magic, and it's real. Ooh. Uh, um, but overall, even though I really like her, especially for the role she fills in episode 1 of being a creepy little child, um, I think she's really great for that. Um, Obviously, like I don't, and obviously like the best cousin character is Butler Ushiromiya, the one and only the goat. Um, like Butler is the main character of Umineko. He and Beatrice, arguably, maybe Angie. Um, and Butler is such a charming character, and he has so much stuff going on with him. Like his relationship with his parents is super interesting. Um, all of his interactions with Beatrice are just golden. Like his arc, like is absolutely genius. I really don't buy into the ideas that the meta battles and the meta world aren't real. That's partially because I think it creates some weird stuff you have to try to explain without magic. But more importantly, it's because I love these characters, and Umineko is all about loving people and creating your own truth, and I don't see any value to be gained from not treating the meta battles, which are, I think, the most, not maybe not the most, but one of the most important parts of the story. Like you can't have Umineko without the meta battles, and seeing how Butler's logic expands over time and how his reasoning changes and grows and how he slowly but surely understands not just the truth, but what truth even is, how he should go about trying to understand it. Like that stuff is like amazing. I've seen a lot of people not really liking him in episode 8, and I don't understand why. I think in that episode, it's pretty much the thematic conclusion of Butler's character arc, how he learned to understand Beatrice's heart, and how he now understands love and magic, and what Beatrice was trying to show him all this time. That scene on the very final moment where he reunites with everyone on the Golden Land, that shit made me cry more than anything ever did. I've cried to that for a solid hour in a row. Like, I'm not exaggerating. I don't think I've ever cried like that to a story. Amazing doesn't even begin to describe it. Also, like, notable is like the boat scene, obviously. In episode 8, it's even more pronounced, like in the episode 8 manga. But even if you ignore all of the thematic levels of Butler and all of his like interesting dynamics with his family and like all of that, Butler is just like a fun character. He's kind and he's dumb. Like, he's dumb but smart. He makes so many logical leaps, but gets to make logical explanations that feel good to hear. It feels like he's really onto something, even though he's not a lot of the time. That's just really fun seeing his whole logic being destroyed just by one red statement from Beatrice. It's really fun seeing him defend his family, not because of any bigger or larger reason, but just because he loves them and he doesn't want to suspect one of them being a bad person, even though he knows they're pretty much shit people. It's just super fun for me seeing Butler do anything in the story. Now I want to discuss Beatrice, which like I've said, I think is maybe the best character I've ever seen in anything. She is so multifaceted and has so many layers to her. Like, the entire point of the game is understanding who even is she. Like, and you're trying to unravel layers of her and trying to understand how she became Beatrice. Is Beatrice even a witch? Like, how does the legend of Rokenjima factor into this? Like, there's so much stuff that goes into answering who she even is, that you are all genuinely interested in her, like, to the point of like being obsessed with trying to understand what it is that's going on with her. I think, to me at least, like, I genuinely didn't understand, and I never wanted to understand more. Um, and then when you finally get the answer, in episode 7 and in the episode 8 manga, like, it's so, like, sad seeing a person live life like this. I think it's like, I'm not gay or trans, um, but seeing a character being represented like that uh, is like, honestly, I don't even know what to say. Honestly, uh, I think her backstory is just like so fucked up on so many levels. Um, and I understand exactly why she did the murders. I've seen someone explain it better than I ever could. I think somewhere on Reddit, and it's like, look at how shitty the Ushiromiya family is. All of these people are so terrible. Like, they're scammers, child abusers, like rapists. Like, they're bad people on so many different levels. I understand, like, why she would go, I should just kill them all. I hate every single one of them, especially Goda, which has committed crimes against humanity. Um, but you also see her internal conflict because she knows that killing so many people is not actually that morally good. So she's kind of trapped between these two states, and it finally breaks her. Um, and when she learns that Butler would come to visit the island, and then she obviously formulates all of her murder plans and gets to become quote unquote Beatrice. Um, but uh, even with Butler, even if we ignore all of that, I think she's just like a super entertaining character. Like all of her cackles, her facial expressions, like the way she taunts people, the way she feels superior, the way she is easily embarrassed. She's so emotive. She's such a sore loser, and she gloats so much when she's starting to win. And even if half of that is an act or some level, like you feel like she's enjoying that act. Like she enjoys taunting Butler even though she obviously likes him underneath. And like you get everything she did by the end, even though like almost none of it makes sense when you read it for the first time. Like I genuinely had no idea why like she would do some stuff at all. Like I would think and think and think about it and just not get it. And now when I'm re-watching some things, like it makes perfect sense, and that's something that Umineko loves to do. Kinzo, I think, is a very interesting character conceptually. How we see and view Kinzo is very much dictated by what others say about him. In the Questions arc, he's dead, so we only see an illusion of Kinzo, and even then, in episode 5, it's another illusion that Lambda Delta constructs, and in episode 7, Kinzo is actually supposedly alive, and we get to know more about his backstory from his point of view. And in episode 8, he again gets recontextualized by Butler's game, in which we see that he was a good guy. Not a good guy, but someone who did love and care for his grandkids and his children, who wasn't as hateful as we saw him. And of course, we can't really say who the real Ushiromiya Kinzo is. And I think that's really interesting within the concept of the cat box to view him like that. I think it's also really interesting that in episodes 1 through 4, which are Berto's game, he seems like mostly the same character. He changes a bit between games, his illusion at least. It very much seems like a consistent sort of person, and in episode 3 we get Ava's flashback in which he still seems like the Kinzo we know, but even Eva's flashback, we don't know if it's an actual flashback, if it's a dream, if Petro just faked that shit up to mess with Butler. I'm inclined to believe that the flashback is real. Maybe Eva twisted some parts of it, which does come up in episode 7 again, when Kinzo himself tells his own life story, and how much of it is actually true is up to interpretation. In the end of episode 7 Tea Party, we get a flashback from Leon's point of view, I think. I don't know exactly how to define it. It's just a flashback that that's being shown to the audience. I don't know who it's being shown to exactly. In which we see that maybe it was Kinzo who killed the Italians, and maybe he just lied about everything he said in that episode. So I really think it's interesting how we know basically nothing about Kinzo aside from a couple crucial facts, and we have to fill in the gaps a lot to understand what kind of person Kinzo was. Angie is an one of the most important characters in the story. And I have to admit that while I do love Angie, especially in episode 8, she's not the greatest character in the story, and that comes from a couple of things. One of which is that she can't really be a part of the Ushiromiya family dynamic, which I think is one of Umineko's strongest aspects, seeing how all of these relationships interact, and meanwhile Angie is very limited in her interactions. And the second of which is just that her introduction in episode 4 takes up so much time and is very, very poorly paced. Even for early Umineko, I think the questions arc is in general is not well paced at all, and the answers arc is much better paced. But episode 4 in particular has some really huge issues in regards to pacing, and that really makes me like Angie less, just because her scenes take up so much time and drag so much that it's hard for me to care about her. I want to see other characters. I can't just focus on one character for 8 hours. I'm not built like that. I know some people are, and a lot of people really 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 love Angie. But for me she's just a really good character until episode 8, and it's in episode 8 in which she gets to have real moments of character growth, and her whole arc of finding the truth versus learning to love despite the truth is very very interesting. I just wish that episode 4 didn't drag her character down so much for me early on, because I think it would have maybe been like a lot more impactful for me if it was better paced. That's about it for the characters. Obviously, I have more to say, but I don't want to spend an entire day recording. So that's it. I'll do a second part about the story, maybe sometime soon. If you actually listen to everything, thank you. See you next time.